This is Canada Talks Archery. Hi, I'm Kelly Taylor, and I'm your host. We're here to talk about anything and everything as it applies to archery, from compound and recurve to target and hunting. Canada Talks Archery is proud to have ASA Archery as its presenting sponsor. For quality bows for every application, when you want precision shooting equipment, trust ASA Archery. Check out ASA's latest bow, the Shootdown Pro. Contact your local authorized retailer or visit psaarchery.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the True Ball Pro-Am, London, Kentucky. Tony Tazza, women's
your third place qualifier from Marsden, Saskatchewan, Canada, representing Hoyt, Erin McGladdery.
And with that, joining us now is Erin McGladdery. Erin, welcome to Canada Talks Archery.
Hey there, how are you?
So we're just coming off a pretty big weekend down in London, Kentucky at the ASA tournament. How did that go for you?
Yeah. Well, London's always a tricky one, because of the infamous power lines. But honestly, everything's feeling so good and things were clicking so well there. I just feel like I didn't hit enough 12 to make the podium during qualification. So there's a little something missing with my game plan. I'm sure we'll get into that later. But otherwise, it was good. Can't really be too upset with it. There's not a lot of things I would change other than game planning during qualification. So yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, so a lot of people mention the power lines, especially in the commentary on the online video. Is it the electromagnetic field that throws people off, or is it the fact that you're basically walking through tunnels to get to your targets?
Yeah, the trickiest part is that it's kind of a clear cut in the middle of a big patch of woods, and so there's hills and there's trees, but then they clear cut this big long lane for power lines, and then you shoot in the trees on either side of the power line and the road. So you're out there and it's always seems like it's so hot and sunny there, so it's super super bright, and then you step about, I don't know, anywhere from 2 to 6 yards into the trees. And so back behind you, the backlight is just so, so bright. And then the targets are in a dark, dark canopy. And so that's the light that everyone struggles with there.
Yeah. And then you have to adjust to being in the blazing sunlight when you come out to the shoot down.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, I'm extremely lucky and blessed that I have really, really great eyesight. But I think for the people who struggle on a normal day with their eyes, that transition from the bright to the dark and just there's no detail on the targets, and a lot of people really struggle there. And sometimes, like, if you shoot the morning round at 7:30 in the morning, one of the rounds you're shooting up the hill and you're facing straight into the morning sun. So then you have that open behind you and the sun in your face, so the target just becomes like a silhouette. So you're kind of aiming like, okay, there's the leg, there's, I can see sky behind me, that's got to be mid body, and just doing your best. For me, I can normally see better than that, so I'm just super lucky that way.
Well, I remember I interviewed Kyle Douglas once, and of course he won the known pro on the weekend.
Right.
Congratulations to him. And I asked him, I said, what differs for you when you're preparing for a 3D tournament versus an indoor target, outdoor target tournament? He says, for 3D, I spend most of my time practicing aiming at something I cannot see.
Right.
So
yeah,
what's the secret to that?
Well, I think the biggest secret is knowing on that target where the rings are without having to look through binos. And, if you could just have that target with no rings on the insert and then have to place a sticker on the upper 12 or the lower 12, like, you should shoot the targets enough that you know where those are. So if you're coming in and you've never seen these targets before, London would be extremely difficult because you can't see the rings. I can rarely see the rings when I'm aiming normally. I just know generally where I need to be at. So that's just experience with the targets, 100%.
Right. And now you shoot in the Women's Open Pro, so yes. You're ranging as well.
We're judging the distance, no rangefinders allowed, and there's all kinds of bicker going back and forth now that there's a couple more known classes, and it's been I think it's all in fun. So it's been kind of interesting with the new classes, and I totally think there's enough room for all the classes to shoot. So yeah, it's been kind of funny to watch that all go down. But I've been shooting unknown, really since I started. So sticking with that for now.
Yeah. So what are some of the secrets to someone who wants to get into unknown and is, obviously practicing ranging? Because there's a few tricks that the organizers will use to throw you off, right? Like they'll put um, uh, a bedded doe behind a couple of trees you have to shoot through, or
Oh
they
yeah.
might use like an infant animal and put it close, and you think, oh well, that's full size bear, and that's this far away. So, what are some of the
Right.
things that you do to try and get around those kinds of I call them tricks, but I guess it's just part of the game, right?
Yeah, and that really is the game is the organizers have fun with it, and it does make it kind of fun because we'll get up there and everybody's like, "Whoa, okay. They really tried to get us here, and are we seeing it right or are we being fooled?" That's the hardest thing. So, I think something I wish I would have done earlier on is spend a lot more time shooting unknown 3D targets. So what I did when I was first learning is I would get up there, I would judge the target, and then I would click it with my rangefinder, and then I'd shoot it good. And so what that kind of did for me was I paid less attention to my tendencies because I knew right after I was going to click it and shoot in the middle. Um, I paid less attention than I should have to my tendencies on certain targets, say white targets, dark targets, targets in a tunnel, targets uphill, downhill, in the shade, in the sun, all those things. I really feel if I hadn't had my rangefinder to rely on, I would have learned that faster. So that's one thing I would do is shoot a lot of unknown practice rounds and keep a notebook and make notes. So if you make a bad error, you're going to remember it a lot more if you actually shoot that arrow versus if you make a bad error 2 seconds later, you click it with a rangefinder and shoot and move on. And I really think you can learn a lot faster if you're truly shooting unknown practice. And then maybe at the end of the day, you walk through and click them all. So that's if you have access to targets, which if you're going to try to go forward with unknown, the more and more and more you can see the targets that you shoot in competition, the better. Like I can't preach that enough. That's another thing that if I could do it all over, I would take out a loan and get more targets and spend more time with the targets because then, if you shoot those targets 30 times before you go to a tournament, you are so much better off than if you're just shooting only at, target butts and just judging ground or trees or whichever. Like the more time you can get with the targets, the better.
So it sounds like one of the messages behind what you just said is learn your lessons the hard way.
Honestly, yes, because that way, if you go out there and you shoot 5 practice courses and you shoot the white mountain goat, 6 yards low every single time, you're not going to forget that. But if you go and walk a range and you judge it and you miss 5 yards off and you click it and then you reevaluate or you just click it and then shoot, you're probably going to forget that pretty quickly because it didn't sting as bad as it would have if you see your arrow die as it's going. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. Or if you have to spend the next 5 minutes looking for your arrow behind the target.
Yeah, you're going to learn a lot faster and make those adjustments. And I feel like it forces you to figure it out. So that's one thing that I've only recently started doing is really start to kick the rangefinder out and work harder on figuring out how to stay in the 10 ring in practice.
Right, right. So, what are some of the differences with the ASA game? Obviously the targets are a little bit different. You've got the 10 ring and then the 2 12s. And if you shoot the bottom 12 without calling anything, you get 12. If you call the upper 12 and you hit the bottom 12, you only get 10.
Yeah.
What is the strategy there? Because on the conversation that they were having with the commentary on the weekend is that some archers find it easier to shoot the top 12.
Yes. So the strategy I would say is so individual. It's kind of all over the place. But I would say the difference between, say what we shoot in Archery Canada or in the IBO is that aiming center 10, you've got space to miss that, that 11 ring or that center 12. You've got room to miss high or low and stay in the 10 ring. Well, now when you're aiming at the 12 rings, there's no space. If you miss the 12, the upper over it or the bottom under it, if you miss by a 16th of an inch, you're an 8. So all of a sudden, that's, sometimes depending on your bow speed and all that, that could be not even a yard off and you're shooting an 8. And so it gets to be a really dangerous game when you're shooting unknown yardage, especially. But even in the known, honestly, if you have a little bobble or you break a little bit off, you're gonna be an 8. So way riskier game. Strategy wise, I think it's really comes down to whichever 12 you feel like you can aim better at. There was a time when only lower 12s were in place. I know a lot of the people who've shot ASA for many years stick with the lowers because they're used to it. For me, the upper 12 ring is often a lot more visible just because it's up higher on the target. So the lighting, I can usually see it better. And I think for most people, they just go with whichever tendency. If they're going to make maybe a bad shot and if they miss low, they'll probably aim at the uppers. Or if their bad shots are generally high, they're probably going to aim at the lowers because maybe they don't miss low often. I think, it really just depends. Some people will shoot upper on some targets, lower on the other. Generally, the people who have targets and spend a lot of time with them, I think will shoot, and then decide which is the best game plan. And that's what I was talking about earlier is like for the ASA, it takes way more game planning and strategy than any other game where you aim in the middle, basically.
Right. And you want to at least catch the 10 ring. But if you look at some of the scores from the weekend, like Kyle Douglas went into the shoot down 50 up.
Right.
You need to be hitting 12s.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And really in the ASA, it doesn't matter, honestly, what division you shoot. You cannot shoot safe and be at the top. You just can't. Like, you have to be hitting 12s. And so that's the hardest part about it, especially if you started out only shooting like center 10 kind of games. Because you're really aiming at, an inch away from the 8. So it can be a lot more stressful and there's a lot more decision making, whether you're shooting known or unknown. You have to make good decisions, decide which targets you're maybe going to aim safer on, which ones you're going to aim aggressive, just to try to get to the shoot down in the classes. It's just, it's a whole different game. It's like two separate events, in track and field is what I would say. Like aiming middle versus aiming at 12 rings. It's just two different worlds.
Right. And then once you get to the shoot down, that's when it gets really interesting because the 14 ring comes into play. And of course,
right.
Less than an inch away from the 14 ring is a 5.
Yeah. And so that's when, you just got to evaluate risk and reward. What are you trying to accomplish? How do you feel about your shot, the wind, your distance? There's just so many things. And so you just have to make good decisions and try to come into the shoot down in a good position. That's the biggest thing. When you're coming into the shoot down in 5th and you have no choice but to try to gain some ground, hitting bonus rings in the shoot down isn't always easy.
Right. And we saw that sort of play out in the known pro division when, Justin Hanna went in first place and then ended, not even on the podium.
Right. And like in that division, you just can't afford to miss those rings. And then you have, Austin Taylor, Kyle Douglas, and all those guys that are out there just hammering bonus rings. And I feel bad for Justin losing that lead, but there's no room to shoot 8s at all.
Yeah. And, it was the 14s that moved Austin, I have to sort of, admit that he's my son. But it was the 14s that moved him into third place. And, that's a difference of a couple $1,000.
Well, that's the thing. Like that was just some risky moves, especially on the long shot. Like that's um not easy to do, especially when you're under pressure and you're outside. There's elements, there's sun, wind, everything else that's always outside. So it's not an easy game, but it sure is fun.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so one of the things that's happened in ASA is the introduction of the known categories for both genders. And we've seen a number of people come into the game that weren't there before. So that's helped grow the game a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the people who are extremely busy shooting other events or just with other things in life and who truly just don't um feel like they have the time to be competitive judging, like if you look at the top, let's say even top 8 people in each of the unknown divisions, those people have been doing it for a long time. Generally speaking, there's not a lot of brand new people who come in and get to that level where they can feel competitive in the unknown categories, and I think that's what scares people from jumping right into those. So maybe I've seen people start in known and then they think, oh well, now that I've kind of got the hang of shooting these targets and how this all works, I'm going to start judging, and so, or the other way around, they judge and judge and judge and then they kind of get um excited about just shooting and knowing how far they are and they switch. So I've seen all kinds of people switching back and forth, trying different things, and I just think it's nice that you have the option. If you're intimidated by judging and you want to try 3D, start out with known and then maybe you'll want to try unknown and figure out which one you like best. They're really two separate games, and so I think it is fun that people can try out both and decide which one they like best.
Right. And as you mentioned just before we started, there's room on the dance floor for everyone,
Exactly.
which is one of the great things. Now we're starting to see some ASA series rise in Canada, which is pretty exciting. They've got
Right.
going next door to you in Alberta that we've had a few people from Manitoba go, and I'm sure they've drawn from Saskatchewan and BC as well. So hopefully we can see that grow. And I think the key thing is going to be, can you start to generate enough interest that you're paying out some cash prizes as well?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I do think it will grow in Canada because it's a completely different game. Yes, it's still shooting 3D, but like I said, the whole strategy of that game is different and it's not something that a lot of people have had the chance to do. So I think just being able to try out something new, give it a go, see what it's all about. That's the exciting part. And I do think it will grow. It would be nice for sure if it could get to the point where, there is a little bit of prize money, even if it's just enough to pay for your weekend.
Right, right. So, where do you see the status of women in archery going? We've seen, some pretty amazing results, between Paige Pierce and Ella Gibson, Tanya Galantine, all sorts of really excellent performances. Um, is that going to attract more people into it?
Yes, and I think we have seen both of the women's divisions in the last couple years continue to grow. And I think what's nice is that the level of play, even since I started, like say in the last 6 years, the level of play of the women has gotten so high that I do feel like the value of the female professionals has gone way up. So that makes it a lot more motivating, for younger shooters to want to turn professional because now there's pretty great prize money. There's a few girls making a living doing it. It's not like nobody's out there making a living, which is kind of exciting, for the young people, because from what I understand years ago, the women were nowhere near the contingency that they are now. So that's pretty exciting that there is money to be won. I think it still has a long ways to go, but we have seen growth, even in our class. But I think as the level of play increases and more ladies start shooting, I think it will continue to grow.
Yeah, and let's just explain things to people who may not know. There's the prize money that you might get for winning the tournament, but if you are aligned with particular manufacturers, some of them will also give contingency money based
Right.
on your standing on the podium, and pretty much you have to be on the podium to get contingency money.
Yes, correct. And so that is the majority of, like, that's the largest portion of what shooters are shooting for if you're shooting the pro division is the manufacturer contingency. And now that's the biggest payouts are from the manufacturers of bows, but also like the sight companies, arrow companies, strings, everything. It's getting to the point where a lot of companies have contingencies, and a lot of those smaller entities for arrows and all that are paying the men and women equal contingency, which is super cool.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had a chat with Chris Schaff in Iowa one day, and I think he had recently switched over to Hoyt, and someone else was switching over. I think that was when Dudley was switching to PSE. And
Yeah.
and I said to him, I said, so when you guys switch companies, is it that you found a better bow, or is it that you found a better deal? And he said, basically, it's a better deal.
Right. Yeah. And for the most part, that is true, I would say. Like, definitely every archer is doing what's, in their best interest and where they feel like they can perform the best. Whether, they might shoot one bow better than the other and take a little bit lesser contract to shoot the bow they like better, I would say, just because then, if you're winning, it makes up for maybe money that you gave up in a contract or something like that. But for the most part, the archers really do need to do what's best for them, because at the end of the day, the amount of money that most of the archers are making isn't like enough to uproot your life for. And
Right.
that's just the reality of it right now.
Right. I mean, even Kyle Douglas, who's tearing it up in practically every competition he shoots, he still runs an archery shop.
Right.
He's still got a day
Yeah.
job. So,
And I would say 95% of all the pros work, in some, in a different form or the other, maybe not full time, but there's not many that are doing archery full time. So the nice part is you can do the sport and pretty much shoot a full schedule and work as well. Although it becomes, at times exhausting, but it's still doable. And some other sports, it's just not an option.
right, right. So, now about your style. So in the last podcast, I interviewed Dean Thornton. Uh,
Okay.
Really great guy. I think everyone likes Dean. He describes himself as an explosive shooter. Like he says
Okay.
he really likes to pull on the bow, and you can see
Mm-hmm.
it in the follow through, not only in his release arm but also in his bow arm going forward.
Right.
What's your style?
So I also shoot a fairly strong shot. It's somewhat explosive, but I work my hinge with finger pressure as well. So I don't shoot a trigger anymore. I shoot a hinge, but I'm not just pulling and pulling and pulling max effort until it goes off. I'm just pulling enough and keeping tension, through the front end, just enough to keep the bow at full draw. And then from there on, I'm just relaxing through my hand and making that release rotate. And so what I found is I'm able to hold steadier that way than if I'm pulling max effort. So I'll get my body really strong, off the range, like in the gym and stuff, so that I do feel like I'm able to shoot strong and not overwork my shoulders and whatnot shooting the bow, just for the longevity of my body. So I shoot strong. I hold about 17 pounds on the back end. I've shot all the way up to 23 and down to 11, and 17 just seems to be a comfortable amount of holding weight for me. And I just recently, I normally shoot a fairly heavy bow in terms of stabilizer weights. And recently I just took 7 ounces off just to give my shoulder a little break and see how I do with a lighter bow. So playing around with those kind of things, allows me to work on my shot and shoot a ton of arrows without getting injured too. So,
Well, and that's one thing that a lot of people have to understand too, is that you have to find out what works for you. You know,
right.
um, leaning back 25 degrees like Chris Schaff does probably doesn't work for everybody, but it works for him.
Right. Right.
Having 50 pounds of stabilizer weight on your bow like Austin does works for him. It's not going to work for everyone.
Right. And like sometimes you just need to adjust, things happen and life happens and our bodies age and, sometimes you do need to make changes just for the longevity of it and to keep going forward, or maybe something you've been doing for a long time isn't the best for you. Like it just is so individual and there's so many different things you can play around with to test that. I think just slowly making adjustments and trying new things is just it takes a lot of time to figure out what really works for you, and then what really works for you with one setup might not work for you with the next setup, so then you got to start over, and to really get and to the top or reach your potential, it really does take, I would say, quite a few years to try different things and make tweaks with your form and your equipment, and it's a marathon, not a sprint.
And it really is a situation of trial and error. I mean, you make this adjustment, see how it works. Well, it didn't
Right.
look so good, so let's go back to this one and then we'll try this adjustment. And just keep
Exactly.
going until you start to get like, really tight groups, or, you're consistently hitting that 12.
Exactly. And like, because, you know, yes, the bows are sort of machines, but they're really not, because they're still so dynamic. When that shot fires, the strings and everything's moving so much, and our bodies are moving, that it's really dynamic, and the bow can be really reactive to what you're doing, or really not reactive, in terms of forgiveness. And so that's something that just takes a long time to even wrap your head around, and understand. And you have to be shooting at a level that's high enough to tell whether your bow is forgiving or not. And so that's something that also just it just takes time. Archery is one of those sports that just, it takes quite a while to really get to that level where you can understand what's going on with you versus what's going on with your equipment.
Right. Okay. Well, before we wrap up, Erin, what's next for you?
So I have this weekend off. I don't have a tournament, so I am swapping my stuff over to my IBO setup today. That gives me a week to practice and kind of get things dialed in with that, and then I will head over to Pennsylvania for the next leg of the IBO next week.
All right. Well, good luck, and hopefully we'll see you on the circuit at some point.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Erin McGladdery, thank you for being on Canada Talks Archery.
Thanks, Kelly.
Okay, very good, Erin. Thank you very much. I'm just going to turn the recording off now.
Sure.
For this segment, we're joined with Jamie Brehaut from the Archery Alberta ASA Tour Director, and Naython Fleet, who is an archer participating in the ASA Tour and host of the second leg, which is occurring in Edmonton this weekend, June 25th. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Nice to be here, Kelly.
All right, so Jamie, let's start with you. Let's go into how the ASA Tour in Alberta came to be.
Well, it's been talked about for quite a few years with a lot of the archers. We kind of sat back and, after COVID was kind of clearing up, and decided that we needed to do something. We used to have a tour in Southern Alberta, and that seemed to work good back in the day. And a lot of people were asking for something a little bit different. Our numbers for 3D archers in Alberta had fallen off quite a bit. So we decided that we need to do something. So I kind of wrote up a proposal, and luckily enough, the Archery Alberta board was fully, supporting it. And we kind of got that in March, and I had till end of May to get a bunch of targets in, and it's kind of started off. We did it one full year. Had five shoots, and it was pretty successful last year, and the numbers are already trending up. Like our first target, or our first competition was in Medicine Hat this year. Last year we had 80 82 or 83 shooters. This year, we're over 120. So we see an increase there, and that's what we want. And it seems that the archery community is in Alberta and some of the other provinces have been standing behind it, and our numbers are way up. I don't have them exactly in front of me, but I did hear we have over 800 3D shooters now from the 200. So that's been a great thing.
Well, nothing succeeds like success. So
Yeah,
let's go through where all the tournaments are being held. The first one was in Medicine Hat. The one coming up is in Edmonton. Where's the next one?
The next one will be Lac La Biche. I'm sure 3D shooters know Renee and his group up there. Then we'll be traveling over to Hinton. They got an excellent facility over there. And then we'll be going down to Sundre area with the kettles. And yeah, they all have our PSC Classic at the end there. So, no, it's we got a lot of clubs. And the one thing we wanted to do, especially after COVID, is get people back. But, COVID hurt a lot of clubs. These people are volunteers. When they couldn't have shoots, that's where a majority of their funding was. And a lot of clubs were skeptical from the start, but after we had that first year, we started seeing a lot of those funds go back to the clubs. So that's what Archery Alberta is here for, is to have strong clubs, which are full of archers, and start getting it going.
Yeah, so obviously it's worked out for you. Now let's talk a little bit about the differences between the ASA game and maybe a World Archery 3D game. I mean, we know that there's the scoring rings look kind of similar, but you got the high 12, low 12, everything in that big circle is 10, and then you got that weird one sort of way out in the middle of nowhere that's a 14. So what makes it so much fun? Maybe Nathan, you could weigh in on this.
What makes it fun is there's more risk and reward with it. So those rings, you have the 12s, they're on the edge of the 10. They're not in the middle anymore, like what we're used to in Canada, the IBO format. So having those rings on the edge, you're playing with the 8 line there and the 8 ring. And then the one way out in the middle, the 14, that one's in the shoot-offs. And you see at the Medicine Hat shoot, we had a lot of them. And then there, you either shoot a 5 or an 8 if you miss it. So you got either a really good score or not so great.
Yeah, and where you end up in the shoot down is kind of dictates what strategy you have going into it with the 14 ring, right? I mean, if you're 20 points ahead in the lead, you just want to keep hitting 10s and 12s. But if you're in 5th place and you got to move up a little bit, you really have no option but to go for the 14.
Yep, and it's almost similar on the actual course itself when you're doing your qualifying. There's a lot of course management, which you don't really deal with in the IBO world. You just kind of aim in the middle and hope you get as many 11s as you can. But with the ASA stuff, especially here in Canada, where our ranges aren't flat, it's very hard to find flat areas in Canada. So
come to Manitoba, we'll give you flat.
Yeah, not over here. So shooting up and down hill, you got to really play your angles and stuff and aiming on the edge of that 10 ring. So there's a lot of course management involved with the ASA side that you didn't have before with IBO.
Right. Now you're running kind of the same categories as the ASA Tour does in the States, right? You've got your K50, you got your women's K50, which, if you're uninitiated, that stands for known, which means they can use rangefinders. But you also have an open category, right?
Yeah. No, we did open as well. We limited the categories versus ASA. I know everyone kind of knows there's lots of categories down there, but there's also a lot of people. So we were able to kind of focus on some key groups. The one that has been really happy is the hunter class. And going back to this being a game, it's also Nathan alluded to that. you got to have a strategy. And I've heard from a lot of the hunters that this is making them better because when they're out there and that big buck's there, they have to make decisions quickly. And doing this ASA and being able to shoot at the 12s and making those decisions kind of quick is helping them actually when they're hunting. So, yeah, it's we have those classes, and yeah, no, it's been good.
Yeah. So just to clarify for the target, so you get the 10 ring, and then you got the 12s on like sort of right on the edge of it, right? So if you hit the top 12 a half an inch high, you might hit an 8. If you hit the bottom one a
Yeah,
half an inch low, you might hit a 5.
and you also have to call those 12. So your bottom 12 is always in play. If you want to shoot for the upper 12, you have to call it before you pull back your bow. So yeah, sometimes you might have a couple arrows in there. So you have to shoot the upper 12. So there's a game within the game, I almost say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And a lot of the strategy comes down to sometimes when you're at the stake and you're looking at the target, what can you see better, right? Can you see the upper 12 better, or can you see the lower 12 better? Or can you make out sort of some distinguishing features on the target that would help you put your pin where it needs to be?
Exactly. And, distance wise, everything like that, like this year, Nathan could probably talk about it, but I wanted everything to kind of be, the same. Like I can't control weather or light and dark, but we were able to do 3 courses that whether you go to the first ASA or the fifth, all those targets will be on that exact same course, and they got a 5 yard variance. So that's one thing we've always found in 3D. You go to one course and it might be super simple. One course it's super hard. This way, we're able to consistently give good product to each archer at each location as well.
Yeah. And it sounds like the ASA game is helping bring in a lot of people to the sport as well, especially with the addition of the known categories. Because you have, sometimes you have kids, they don't want to lose arrows. Sometimes you have archers who, they're into the target game. They haven't spent a lot of time learning how to judge. So they'd rather just know, hey, that one is 37 and a half yards.
Absolutely. I know in the known game we've seen that grow quite a bit. I still want to say though, that the unknown game's still there. There's still people that want to shoot it. One thing we have in Canada, our number size isn't as big, but we're working on that. So we can't have all the categories, but I definitely do not want to see the unknown game die away. I can't shoot it. I've tried really, really hard. Spent a couple of years practicing it. My internal rangefinder is broken, so when I see those guys shooting, I'm almost in awe because it's a different. We're all shooting bows. That's what I've always said. As long as someone's out shooting a bow, I don't care what discipline is. I don't care what bow it is. I don't care, what arrows they're shooting. As long as they're out enjoying the sport, that's all I really care about. But yeah, we have seen a big uptick in known, and yeah, it's just been great so far.
Well, it's amazing when you see interviews with some of the pros down south, and maybe PJ Riley and Chris Perkins are talking about a target, and they're trying to figure out how far away it is, and maybe it's Dan McCarthy instead because Dan McCarthy shoots unknown, and he'll say to he'll say to the interviewer, he'll say that target looks like it's 49.2 yards away. And then the interviewer puts the rangefinder on it, and it's 49.2 yards away. And it really is a skill because organizers will do all sorts of things to try and mess up your internal rangefinder, as you put it, right? Like they'll put it behind trees, they'll put it, down a hill or in the shade, all those sorts of things that can really affect how you judge. And the only way I think you learn how to judge, I talked to Erin McGladdery about this, is if you want to learn how to judge, put the rangefinder away and learn the hard way, by picking up
Yep.
arrows. If you cheat on it, it's a shortcut, but it doesn't really give you the lesson learned the hard way approach.
Exactly.
No. I shot unknown for 8 years, and then went away from competing as a whole, came back and there was a known class and just went straight to it because it is a skill you have to pick up and you lose it and it takes time and it's a whole other factor.
So,
And it's kind of going back to, like, in every sport you have it. Like Wayne Gretzky, his office was behind the net. Not everybody can do it. But yeah, you have different things within archery. But I always say, once you really settle down to the core of it, we're all archers. Doesn't matter target, 3D, field, known, unknown. We're one big family. I know I had Jay Salo come up from PSE to our oilman shoot, and that's one thing he said. I was surprised at how close the Canadian archers are. I know with my camp, it's always doors wide open, come on in, and we'll treat you like family. And that's what I'm really proud of is being Canadian. Our actual archery itself is we're one big family.
hey, as long as you're bending a bow, you're friends to us, right?
Exactly.
So how has this worked out in terms of seeing the numbers increase last year to this year
Um,
in the ASA
like I
tour?
said, in the ASA tour, like I know our membership has been up, like I said earlier. But yeah, after the first shoot, we basically had over 40 more archers. We also added one class, non-competitive class. So you can come out, try it. If you want to just come shoot with your friends, you can do that. I know one thing after COVID that I really wanted to bring back was, getting out there, shooting with different people. If I never shot with some people in the sport, I wouldn't have the friends I have. Like I'm still in contact with your son. And if I never would have shot target that day with him, we would have never talked. And no, we've had fun times in Vegas, practicing and talking. And that's one thing I wanted to bring back. We kind of, and we also have stuff on the line. We have belt buckles this year. There's some good money there. We were able to secure some contingency this year. But the biggest thing about splitting up the groups and kind of shooting into categories is just to get to know people. I know out here we have the super senior female and then the senior female. The super seniors decided to shoot with the seniors, just so they could get around more people and have more competition. But I tell you what, if you come to one of these shoots and you hear yelling, screaming of excitement, it's the senior women. I know Nathan had to let down a couple times on the course
Yeah.
because the senior women ahead of us were having so much fun. So, I know at the start, a bunch of them said, well, I don't want to shoot with this person, or I want to shoot with this person. It was more, I want to shoot with this person, this person, this person. And we kind of said, well, we're going to put you, in your groups. And I know even after the first tournament, I was getting told, you have to put us together again. We had so much fun. So that's not going to be everyone. But I have seen, especially after COVID, there was a lot of archers that, didn't want to get out there. And, this is one way. Like I can just see in the camps afterwards. That's one thing I know about 3D is a little bit different target because, target indoors, you kind of go to your hotel rooms and, go there. But when we're out camping, I probably, like, if we took archery out of it and we just got together for camping, that's my biggest enjoyment. That's where the most fun actually comes, is sitting down and not talking archery with these people and getting to know their life stories. And, yeah, that's one thing we found is that's the fun of bringing this back and having everybody get together.
So you're getting a good mix of people, aren't you? You're getting, like you said, the super seniors, and probably people are behind them on the course going, hey, next time I want to shoot with them, right? But you're also getting like people your age, older men, younger shooters, a wide variety of people. So I think this is a great thing that you're doing in Alberta that's really going to help grow the sport, and hopefully we can encourage other provinces to follow your lead.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of provinces reach out to me on how to do this and stuff, and they could continue to do that. But if you do go to our Archery Alberta webpage, and look under ASA, you'll kind of see what we're doing. We also have one of the bigger things that I've seen come out of this. My wife will be mad at me about talking about this, but I spent a little bit of money on camera equipment, and more than once. And we were able to do a live event, permitting that we have enough coverage there. But yeah, we were able to do a live event, and yeah, we had more than 10,000 people actually watch that event. So now we're able to share this with our family and friends. And that's what I noticed. We're doing a live broadcast. We're able to show everybody what we do, and hopefully it translates into them saying, hey, you know what, that looks like fun. We're going to go out. And you know what? This younger generation is very much, they're more, hey, if I can see it, I might want to do it, versus just hearing about it.
So it sounds to me as though there's a pretty good marketing lesson here from your experience for other provinces that might be thinking about this. To hit that certain generation, you need to show people what it's about, not tell them what it's about, right? With the videos and coverage of the event. Okay, so before I wrap it up, was there anything you wanted to add?
In Alberta, we allow anyone to come here, any Archery Canada member, any provincial member, you can come on out. The belt buckles for everybody. So we have our tour stuff, and then we got some money at the end. But the biggest thing is come out and just have fun.
With the provinces, I have 4 BC, 8 Saskatchewan, 3 Manitoba, and then 1 American for the next one coming up.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks very much for being on Canada Talks Archery. I just want to say congratulations. That's a great thing you're doing to help grow the archery game in Canada, but also the ASA game. The partnership with Archery Canada, I think, is working well. And if your province is the best indicator of that, congratulations.
Thank you for doing this podcast. That's going to push everyone else to do some more of this stuff too. So thank you for taking your time and doing it.
Okay, Jamie Brehaut and Naython Fleet, thanks for being on Canada Talks Archery. Thank you for being with us for another episode of Canada Talks Archery. I'm Kelly Taylor. Thank you to our sponsor, PSE Archery. Remember, check out their latest bow, the Shootdown Pro. Contact a qualified retailer or check out psearchery.com.